We do have some things that we would like to share with you about the importance of learning from history. And we'll start off with this as a kind of a high-level takeaway, that at our time and place in history, we need foresight. We need an ability to anticipate the future in much more significant ways than ever before in history. Because if we are not able to anticipate where things are headed, we will not course correct in time. And as those of you who've been involved in our programs, right from the opening retreat, a question that we get from people is, do we have time? Do we have time to effect the changes that we need to effect before everything falls apart? Our answer is we don't know if we've got time or not. We're moving as fast as we can. But we also know that what we're going to need to learn in order to course correct are exactly the same things we're going to need to learn to pick up the pieces when we get to the other side if things do fall apart. So it's not a waste of effort. But that foresight, that strategic foresight, understanding where we're headed and how things are unfolding is critically important, and we can't do that if we don't understand the history. Strategic foresight depends on having a deep understanding of history and how things came to be the way they are. And it's only through that exploration of history we get a sense of the nature of our lives in the context of a bigger story. And it's a loss of connection with that bigger story of what it means to be alive and human that causes us to be so short-sighted, so selfish, and so superficial in our priorities. We're all going to die. All of you in the program have heard me say this many times. We're all part of something much bigger. And if we don't understand what that much bigger process is, whatever we're doing with our smaller projects could end up being terribly harmful. And we see a lot of that in the world today. So it's critically important we develop that sense of that larger community and the kind of innovation, ingenuity, dedication, striving capability, and an ability to learn from not just your own experience, but the experience of all those who've gone before that we're going to be exploring tonight. So I'm going to invite Mark to make a few comments here or to share with you something about why he thinks history is so important. Not just for project managers, but for people who are concerned about developing the capacity to live well and to do well.
Right, thank you, Ken. And so I'll start off by saying that there's a very close correlation between history and the future. And it's quite sad, actually, because history is being cut out of schools in the UK. There's actually an effort to keep history on the curriculum, and I know in Canada there's challenges there as well, because it's just not seen as something that's relevant for children to go through. So it's actually quite sad, but it's very important that we keep it on the curriculum. And one of the things that's happening in history is it's actually changing quite dramatically. And there's a number. If you could put up the first slide, I'll explain why. So we've got in the top left, we've got a picture of a mural that's in the Yale University, and it was painted in 1940, and it's a depiction of dinosaurs as perceived in 1940. Now, it's a very important transition here, because basically you're going from a 1940 view to a 2010 view of dinosaurs. And the 1940 view is very much based on the Richard Owen view, which was developed about 1810 when he discovered fossils. And of course you can see the T-Rex with its tail, on the floor, the splayed Triceratops there with its legs, and it's all based on anatomies of lizards, right? Because that was the belief system that dinosaurs were basically creatures that were similar to lizards, and the whole anatomy, basically, of all these different dinosaurs have evolved from that. Now, that's what we call historiography. Historiography is very important because historiography is about dating when a particular topic was written about. So the Giza Pyramid was written about 100 years ago by archaeologists, and they wrote their view of the Giza Pyramid. That view has changed dramatically, fast forward to today. And that's what you see in the second image, the 2010 image, which is a far more accurate view of dinosaurs. So we've now moved into contemporary view, and you can see that we now know that these Triceratops moved at very high speeds of 40 kilometers or whatever. They were highly coloured. We now know their physiology. We've got it down to DNA and so on. And that's the second thing that really comes out quite strongly here, is this interdisciplinary approach, where we're bringing many disciplines together and we're basically reinterpreting history based on multiple layers of different type of information that are coming in, and we're overlayering it. So we're not just looking for first-hand accounts of history, we're also bringing in forensics and all sorts of different scientific tools that have come in through these different disciplines that allow us to look at this in a far different way. And I think what you'll see in the next, number of years is almost the rewriting of almost all history, because we're looking at it through these different disciplines, and we're also looking at things through different lenses. So one of the things I discovered was when I was doing the research on the Giza Pyramid, there's about 1,000 books out there on the Giza Pyramid. But these books have been written by either archaeologists, architects or engineers. And I was looking for a book that was written by a project manager. And the project manager would be interested in the organizational side of the project that built the Giza Pyramid. I couldn't find it because no one had actually written it, because they were looking at this topic through their own different lenses. So that the lens, we talked about this yesterday, is a framework. Looking at things through a certain framework forces you to pick out the elements that are important to that particular framework, but you start to see things in a slightly different context. And I think that's what's so exciting about going forward with history, is that we'll make discoveries that are staring us in the face, right, and that will actually help our overall knowledge expansion. It'll expand it quite dramatically, and I'll show you a few examples, but I'll pass it back to you.
But I think the discovery that history is a source of learning, and that we have to be very careful about how we construct our histories, because history doesn't necessarily teach effective lessons. It depends on how it was written, and the care with which the stories were told, and particularly the mentality and the worldview and the disciplines of the people who are making the observations. Because one of the fundamental problems with human beings is that we don't act on reality. And all of you who've come through the program in recent years know this next line. We act on our perceptions of reality. We sample reality, but we only sample a small part of it. And we simplify reality dramatically. And when we're working in groups, we simplify it even more for ease of communication. So this is always a problem in the relationship between the experts and the master builders and the people who have a deeper level of understanding, and other people who are working or engaged as stakeholders in a project, in that it's very difficult to communicate the complexity of the real world in a way that people can understand and pick up on readily. So that so many histories are written in a way where it can be readily understood by the reader, but which will not provide much insight as to what was actually going on, for the complexity of it. And of course today we have a huge problem in that everybody's so busy they don't have to spend very long in updating themselves or learning about what's actually happening, which then means we're always sort of skimming on the surface of things. But that effective project management and the templates that are used in project management and other systems of management and oversight and control that we can draw on from history illustrate how we learn how to develop these higher level templates that cause us to swing our attention around to different parts of the situation or the challenge that we're facing, so that we don't overlook some important part of the developments that have to be in place in order for the project to actually be successful. And from a human learning ecology perspective, it's always a little bit perplexing that people don't know about this, the importance of developing some sort of oversight and control architecture that will help you to identify areas that you might overlook if you hadn't had some kind of a framework or a structure to tell you.
Right.
But then you also, and I know many of the examples that you've drawn on from master builders from the past, and the level of ingenuity that they developed and the way they're able to learn as they were going by engaging with the materials, engaging with the project and the architecture, and doing problem solving in real time as they're sorting out what's actually possible to do, which then overlays project management with strategy and strategic learning, because the essence of strategy is that kind of adaptive flexibility.
Yeah.
You get into a challenge and you realize that you're not prepared, you don't know exactly how to do something, or if it's even possible, so you have to do some experimentation. You have to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
And that kind of learning seems to be, at least in many organizations, not something that they're willing to encourage or support for people. So I imagine that project managers would have similar kinds of frustrations that I hear the engineers have. They get into engineering because they want to be doing creative, innovative things, but then they find themselves so constrained by the standards and the standardization of the formulas. And I suspect that project managers find themselves in very much the same situation, where they're not able to exercise much in the way of creativity, innovation, and learning on the go, that they get confined by the plan so tightly that they lose the soul and the spirit of what it is they're doing.
Right.